If you live in Stevens Point, you probably know Sentry Insurance by its iconic building. But the story of Sentry Insurance and its relationship to Stevens Point is a long-standing tale that is more than 100 years in the making. The company that is now known as Sentry Insurance, a mutual company, was originally founded in 1904 by members of the Wisconsin Retail Hardware Association. Its name back in 1904? The Hardware Dealers Mutual Fire Insurance Company of Wisconsin. The company's first office was originally located in Berlin, Wisconsin, but remained there only 8 years before moving to Stevens Point. So why make the move to Stevens Point? Because of Stevens Point native P.J. Jacobs. In 1911, he had been elected secretary of the Wisconsin Retail Hardware Association and was instrumental in moving the company, along with its 4 employees, to his hometown. 1 year later, he was named president and led the company until his death in 1936. Stevens Point in the early 1900s was a growing and thriving town. At the time the Wisconsin Retail Hardware Association moved to town, the citizens' main sources of employment came from the railroads, paper mills, and river-related jobs.
At about the time Hardware Mutuals moves in, we begin to get businesses really beginning to catch fire. And railroads are really beginning to take off, and you begin to get the evolution of the paper industry, the university, all of the things that make Stevens Point what it is today. It's just about the same time that Sentry or Hardware Mutuals came to Stevens Point, about 1912. So you have the development of really 3 paper mills in Portage County, the Plover Whiting paper mill, and then 2 that become eventually consolidated, the River Division and the Stevens Point Division. You also had the evolution of a variety of breweries. At one time, Point had 5 different breweries. The one that survived, of course, is the Stevens Point Brewery, which is doing just fine now. In the early stages of the paper industry, if you see pictures of the inside of the buildings, the men working on the paper mills never wore shoes. Shoes were very expensive and they didn't want them getting wet, so they walked around barefoot in these mills. It had to be extremely dangerous. Looking north on Division Street, approximately 1900, Stevens Point really develops in 2 parts. First, it develops along the river because of the logging and sawmilling industry, that sort of thing. But then as the railroads come in the 1870s, the south side begins to develop. Stevens Point was a rather important hub for passenger service. This picture, which was probably taken somewhere around 1900, shows a passenger train coming through, taken from the depot upstairs at the Point Depot. And that played a very important role in Stevens Point in bringing business in, bringing people into the community for a whole variety of reasons, to set up businesses, whatever it happened to be. Steam passenger trains came through Stevens Point every day. So originating in the big cities, but going through literally every town along the way. It was the only way to get around. And these towns are about 5 miles apart, Nelsonville. When trains came through and built the depot, that augmented everything for these towns. But when the trains left, then the towns, of course, began a very quick decline. So places like Amherst and Nelsonville are very tiny now.
In 1911, the insurance landscape changed again in central Wisconsin. The Wisconsin legislature passed its first workers' compensation law to protect employees injured on the job. This legislative milestone created an insurance opportunity for the members of the Wisconsin Retail Hardware Association, and in 1914, they formed the Wisconsin Hardware Limited Mutual Liability Insurance Company. Our country was forever changed in April 1917 when the United States entered World War I. The effects of the war were felt throughout the country, even here in Stevens Point. With many male employees called to serve their country, there was a shortage of employees, and the Hardware Mutual Casualty Company was on the verge of going out of business. Female employees stepped up and filled the empty positions and kept the company running.